Where are you now?
Come on down, come on down. I think we've got final few stragglers who may still be in the foyer, and they're taking the rest of the pizza. So if there's none left after Abby's talk, then you can blame the people who still stood out there. Fantastic. Right. I hope everyone is feeling well fed and well hydrated. I think I am so excited for this talk because there is a whole bunch of content that we have been talking about with different teams and different organizations that is tied to the topic that Abby, I'm going to try not to spoil any of it, Abby's been talking about. We were very lucky last time to have Abby's colleague Kat here from Kratix. Well worth checking out Kratix, by the way. If you like the idea of promises that enable teams to understand how they work with other teams, which is something I could nerd out about all day, then check out Kratix and the fantastic company Syntasso. We did, by the way, you missed out on this, at the last Platforms and Product Meetup, nickname Syntasso employees Tassies, but I'm not sure it's going to stick. So
We haven't got a good one yet. I'm like,
I'm trying to bring one to the table. But yeah, so I hope you all enjoy this talk. I'm certainly massively looking forward to this. And yeah, without further ado, I'll stop blathering and hand over to you.
We tried Sinners on for fit, and people weren't a big fan of it. So
Scandalous.
Yes, so today has nothing to do with my product, just to be clear. There's going to be zero product or technology even in this talk today. So I'm sorry if that's what you're looking for. Today I'm going to be talking about more of the theory behind platforms and about building internal supporting platforms, and doing so with a bit of my hat on as a CNCF working group co-lead. So, okay, so at the end of the day, like, I'm all about platforms. I'm a platform engineer. I have been for many years before my current role where I have a title of software engineer. It's weird. I co-lead a working group in the CNCF that focuses on platforms. I support team topologies as an advocate. So Abby spoke a bit about it already, and I'll touch on the topic as well. And I build Kratix right now because I think about what I wish I had to be able to build internal platforms, and that's what I'm trying to help other people build. So today is all about them platform engineers. And I think this is an interesting and important point to make, because so much of internal platforms today are talking about developer experience from an app developer point of view. From what developer experience are you providing to users? And that's so critical, and we should talk about it. But if you don't think about putting your own oxygen mask on first and having your own developer experience, there's no chance of you providing a good experience to your users. And that's what I want to talk about. So what we're going to talk about is the CNCF, and I'm going to introduce that. So if you're not familiar, don't worry. And how it's talking about platforms and supporting platform builders. I'm going to talk about, in specific, one piece of work that we did this past year, which is called the maturity model, and talk about that. And then have a look at that challenge of, is platform engineering actually different from ops? Where is that evolution happening? What does that feel like? And finally, I love doing these kinds of talks because I get to hang out with people doing the hard work, and I get to recruit for the CNCF working group. And so I want to talk a bit more about some of the exciting projects we have on, and hopefully encourage some of you to get involved and share your stories. So what is the CNCF that I talk about? It's the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It is the foundation which was created to support Kubernetes, coming out of Google and becoming open source. It has since become the home of hundreds of different projects. Often they are projects around the Kubernetes ecosystem, but they often support things both on and off Kubernetes clusters. And so the key here is that they are open source in a foundation and supported. So in a terrible event like Weaveworks going under, though they created Flux is in this foundation and safe. And that's one of the great aspects of being in a foundation. I want to run through, it's very small, don't need to read it, how we support technologies. If we're going to have hundreds of different projects under the CNCF umbrella, how does that get supported? Well, it starts with the same thing an organization basically has, like a CTO and an office of the CTO. And the office of the CTO for the CNCF is called the Oversight Committee, or the TOC, Technical Oversight Committee. And these are the people who come from around the world in different industries and identify what needs help. What do people need help with to adopt cloud native technologies, adopt these different projects, and have success for their businesses. But they can't do everything. There's like 20 of them. And so what they do is they offload to a number of technical advisory groups. This would be like saying that you have some directors or some technical leads that have a deeper focus that can help surface the key information to that office of the CTO. These tags, the technical advisory groups, some of the examples are security, storage, network, observability. So these are big terms that have a lot of meat behind them and do deserve some time and energy put to them. One of them is called app delivery. And this is about how you get your software from a software developer's laptop to production and to your end users. Within a technical advisory group or a tag, you can self-organize. And one of the ways you can self-organize is you can create working groups that are more ephemeral in nature. They're based on the important topics of the day, and they go properly deep on something that is a little bit more narrow. And so in the tag app delivery, we have a number of working groups that have been created. We have platforms, GitOps, operators, and artifacts right now. And these you can see are kind of more implementations almost. They're a little bit more detailed. They're a little bit less everlasting than something like app delivery from a software laptop to a production. And that's because they do come and go with trends in the industry, but they deserve the deep dive to understand where is the fire behind all that smoke, behind that hype cycle, and that's sort of what we do. And so within the platforms working group, that is where I'm a co-lead, and we work to try and support organizations figuring out what it looks like to use platforms as a mechanism for supporting app delivery. Platforms are a solution, so just calling out that not every organization wants a platform, wants to invest in a platform, has a platform. Might argue that one, but we'll take that another day. But yeah, so I do want to call out, like, platforms working group inherently comes to the table saying platforms are a great way to help support app delivery. And we want to look at how to apply that. Within that group, I just want to call out the diversity of companies that have representatives in the group. There's no closed doors here. You can pop into the Slack anytime. You can pop into the community Zoom calls anytime. And you'll see that we have a diversity of size of organization as well as type. In particular, I'm going to call out that we have what the CNCF deems end user companies. So these are companies that make no money for having internal developer platforms, but they require them to serve their customers, right? So this is the typical, you sell groceries and t-shirts and things, and you have a developer platform to support you. So you can see, like, Datadog, arguably, Payit, you can see NatWest. These are examples, Seagate, these are examples of that. What you'll also see is that we have consulting firms. So these are companies that do earn money around platforms, typically helping other organizations create them. But it means they get quite a breadth of understanding. They see lots of different examples of platform building. So they bring a really interesting perspective. And we have big consulting firms. Red Hat has a consulting arm. Maybe they're kind of cool. But also small ones like Crumware here and Amisto 42. So we have sort of a range. And of course, you have the dirty, dirty vendors. Hi. Vendors are cool to get involved as well, because vendors often come from being the end users and wanting to help solve the problems that they felt, and also are the ones you have to petition to make useful tools. If you don't talk to them, if you don't tell them why their tools are just vaporware, then you'll just keep being frustrated by it. So it's this ecosystem of these three types of companies and the people behind them that come together to create such an interesting group of people to have these discussions. So just want to call that out. So as a group, what do we have to do? So we create this working group. What happens? Well, first of all, what's platforms? I don't know. It's on Gartner. It's on some hype cycles. What do we do with it? So the first thing we did is we wrote a white paper to be able to define platforms, because one sentence wasn't enough. We needed like 10 pages. And that white paper went on to define one of my lessons learned. It's one of the first things I worked on. It's like get a better soundbite. But this is a definition of a platform. A platform is a collection of capabilities. So a platform has many pieces to it. It is a cross-cutting layer within an organization. So it should support many of the teams and many of the needs within the organization. And it kind of tries to pull out the typical needs of that organization. So a lot of people say a platform can't serve everyone. Aim for the 80% case. And I think, can it serve everyone? Maybe. Aiming for the 80% case to start with, I think, is reasonable if you're looking for that typical use case. And it should support those broad use cases. So collection of capabilities that help your organization move forward in a fairly standard way is maybe another way of saying that. But the white paper didn't just have that snazzy clip. It had a whole bunch of information. It talks about teams behind platforms, what it means to build a platform team, and the challenges associated with introducing platforms to organizations. It tries to talk about measurement. I don't think I've been to a single conversation about platform engineering without measurement being a key question being asked. And I don't have a great answer. So you can try asking me, I'll try. But it's hard. Like, measuring is really hard when you have paying customers on the other side. It's even harder when you don't. And so just being honest, that's a part of platform engineering that is still an open question. And we're challenging ourselves as a group to come up with more ideas here and challenge ourselves, but it's tough. So this was our white paper. You can check it out. And the white paper was cool. And everybody loved it. Everybody was like bringing it to their CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, these high-level people, getting buy-in that these were like the right ideas and these would be good for an organization. Problem is like, it's a white paper. Like, what do you do with this information? Like, you want a platform, sure. You read this thing and you go, that would be great. And then you go look at the fact that you're on Kubernetes 1.19 and you need to upgrade. And you're like, that's not in the white paper. What do I do now? And so we had to find a way to connect these like lofty goals that people agreed were high value to something that people could actually bring to an organization and get value from in their day-to-day lives. And so they wanted to be able to make it concrete, as I said. They wanted to be able to point at something in their company that backs up where they were making investments. So they were trying to say to their leadership team, we want to approach platform engineering in this way. The leadership team would say, great, what do you suggest we do next? We should treat it like a product. What does that mean? Right? Like people want to be able to point to something and give themselves a roadmap. And we need to be able to connect people to where they are. So before I unveil a maturity model, I do want to say that all models are wrong and some are useful. The maturity model, I am a recovering consultant myself. I was a consultant for 7 years. I have seen them be applied mega wrong, and I do everything I can to encourage these to be a practitioner's tool rather than a tool to measure and like beat people with. And the best thing about being involved in this project is that's what people have said they feel like it is. Like, we're seeing practitioners pick this up and use it. I can't promise it will never be used in an evil way, but we'll try. So with that disclaimer set, I want to talk through how we built this model. I'm not just going to put up the screenshot. We'll get that. Give me a minute. But like, let me talk you through like the process, because then you can understand where you can poke holes, where this might apply to your context and where it might not. So the first thing we had to talk about was what actually are the questions you should be asking yourself when thinking about platforms. What enables you? What challenges you? What are the things you need to think about when building platforms? And I realize the text here might not be the best sizing. So I'll read these out. It's how are staff and funds allocated? So how do you fund the thing that you want to work on? Why and how do users discover and use the capabilities behind this platform? So discoverability and adoption. How do your users interact with and consume? So what are the interfaces and how do they get access to these things? How are platforms and their capabilities planned, prioritized, developed, and maintained? So this is full lifecycle conversation, not just how do I like bootstrap a new application, but how do I deal with it on day, not just 1, but 2, 2,000, 20,000, and so on. And finally, what is the process for gathering and incorporating feedback? May not have a good answer for measurement, but I know it's important. So I had to, when reading those out, shorten all of them because nobody wants to read a sentence. And that's exactly what we did next. We said, what is the thing people are going to want to think about when it comes to these questions? And so we applied a word aspect to each of these. It's not enough information, but it catches people's attention. It gives them a sense of what matters. So investment, adoption, interfaces, operation, and management. From there, we now know what matters. We now need to think about like, well, how does somebody evaluate themselves against this? Like there's gonna be things that they need, things they don't need, things they can grow into, things they've outgrown as well. And so we thought about levels. Levels are dangerous. Everyone wants to be the best, right? And we tried very hard to make that not the key to this model. So first of all, they're not numbered. I know you're all smarter than that. You're already like, this is 1 through 4, Abby. But not only are they not numbered, they are attempting to be named in a way that you can apply to your needs as an organization. So this level here, so I'm not gonna say a number, this level here called provisional, you can think about what provisional means at an organization. Sort of, it works, it gets you started, it's not really like long-standing or mature, but it gets you moving, right? That sort of applies. Operational, okay, I now know that I can trust this thing, that I can run my business with it, that it's consistent and trustworthy. Cool. Scalable, oh, I'm hiring 10 engineers a week, can't onboard them fast enough, I've hit that hockey stick growth as a product, I need to be able to onboard 1,000 users a day, whatever, right? And then optimizing. Everybody wants to be optimizing at all phases, but you do hit a point where really it's just micro improvements, right? You've gotten past all the big challenges of becoming stable and becoming scalable, and you're just looking for those micro improvements. I'm at a 10-person organization right now. If I was at scalable, we'd be running through that VC money like there's no tomorrow. That would be silly, right? That's the point of these levels, is there are organizations that are 20,000 big and are barely out of provisional, and they should be questioning themselves. But there are also organizations that are tens of people big that are thinking about problems that they really only have to worry about when they're worrying about scaling. And they're just not there yet. They don't have product market fit. They don't know what's going on yet. And that's okay too. And that's what we're trying to get to with these levels. So now, I said at the beginning, platforms in the working group says that there is an answer to it. And maybe not everyone needs a platform. I'd argue everyone has a platform. So the first thing we have to acknowledge is just like before CI/CD became automated as a norm, everyone had a delivery pipeline. It might have included walking up to Jane's desk and be like, can you SCP this file for me, please? And then click restart. But it was a delivery pipeline, right? It just might not have been automated. That's the same with platforms today. Everyone has something they depend on to get software from their laptop to production. It might be running Terraform on their laptop. It might be Heroku or functions as a service provider, SaaS provider, something like that. But they depend on something. That is at this provisional level. What you can see here on all of the levels, voluntary, erratic, custom, by request, ad hoc. All of these are indicating that they get the work done, but it's not scheduled, it's not scientific, it's not pre-planned, it's very reactive in nature. The next thing we had to do was say, now how do we take that lofty white paper and make it into something people can concretely talk about? And that is the optimizing level. Here we're talking about not just a platform, not just a technology, but an ecosystem, an environment that encourages participation across the organization, integration and managed aspects, and the collection of data that is beyond just some numbers on a spreadsheet that may or may not be applicable to user experience, so that qualitative and quantitative aspect of things. So we kind of tried to qualify that. And then the muddy middle. So now you can take your screenshots. I know everybody's like, I've already taken the QR code and done it, get out of here. But realistically, what we wanted was to showcase actual step changes for each of these levels. So there's of course going to be gray areas. You're going to be halfway between levels sometimes. That's just part of life. But there's a 12-page paper behind this table, and I highly recommend people look at it. One of the things that I'm most excited about that paper is that it tries to exemplify what it might feel like to be in any one of these squares on any one of these aspects. So if you're living in a interfaces standard tooling, so operational level, what you're probably going to notice is that there's code as templates. You're going to have things like Terraform modules that people can depend on and things like that. But you're going to be having a struggle around, well, who owns those templates? And what happens when people use those templates and want to evolve them? And there might be some challenges there. We're not going to get everything right, but this was based on that large group. We had over 50 reviewers of this paper trying to articulate their experiences. We want yours as well. So the other thing just to say is that there's no, that you're not either provisional or operational or scalable or whatever. You are where you are on this. And what we find a lot of times is that people will move one needle before they move another, and they'll start to feel held back by one. So for example, you might start moving along the needle of investment towards the as a product because you listen to Abby, you're like, that's the right way to do things. I want to do that. And you start to get held back because actually you're not really measuring things in a really consistent way. And so it's really hard to be able to apply that product thinking without understanding. And so you have to move the needle on measurement to allow yourself to move forward. But they're not explicitly tied, but you'll find they're a little bit tied. So quickly, how are people using this model? So they said we had these three groups and the three types of people in our group. The first is the end user, and we have a use case that was shared from an organization that has a growing engineering team. And they took this model and actually really changed the words. Like they completely took the intention rather than the words themselves. And what they did is they started asking themselves per capability at their organization, where they needed the capability to be and where it actually was. So bootstrapping a new application, everyone's favorite topic for a platform, they were like, don't need it. We have very few new applications. It can be provisional, right? Even though they'd actually been talking about trying to make it scalable with automation and all these things. But they looked at other things like observability and were going, we are being absolutely crushed by issues in production. We need to up our observability game. That needs to be more scaled, and we need to move up there. And so they did that. They visualized this, and it changed them from a reactive team to one that actually had a vision for what they wanted to invest in, where they could say no. A user could come ask them for something, and part of being a product manager is saying no. And now they had something they could lean back on and do that with. So they really like that. Vendors. One of the vendors in the group talked about how they could use this maturity model to actually start to talk about who is the right customers for their product. Products are not magical. Like vendors are not magically able to support every user in every company in the world. There is usually a specific sweet spot for any one product. They can stretch a bit. But how do you communicate that? How do you say, you know what, actually your organization isn't a good fit because actually you're too mature for us. You're too far down your journey, or you're not far enough down your journey. And they use this to be able to ask questions about where people are, where they want to be, and where they needed help, and whether or not the product could help them. So help to kind of communicate that. And the consultancy, they help both on the platform building and using side. And they did things actually quite similar to the vendor. It was about making it visible what would be a part of their piece of work with a customer. So what are they going to invest in? What needles are they going to move? And how can they expect to see? What can they expect to see when they actually get there? So they'll go from having these kinds of feelings, these kinds of pains, to having these kinds of experiences. But that doesn't mean they will be pain-free. They'll have different pains, and here's what they'll look like. And sort of being able to do an SOW or a statement of work that is steeped in kind of an action plan was helpful. So what you might be thinking is, gosh, I go to all these platform things and it's just ops, just a bit pizzazz thrown in, or Lou's here, so I had to give him a bit of crap. Just today, ops in a trench coat is like my new favorite thing ever. So yeah, like I'm talking about platforms, I'm talking about all these amazing things, but like at the end of the day, I'm giving servers to people, right? Like I'm giving environments. Is this not just ops? Like, and if we're talking about a product that people can access without talking to me, that feels pretty over the wall, right? So how is this not ops? And so I'm gonna call out like rebranding of stuff is really confusing. Monitoring versus observability. Anyone been through that rebrand yet? But the thing is there's magic in those rebrands. There are actual tidbits of gold underneath that change in terminology, but it's so easy to get muddied up in the marketing and to get muddied up in the like gray areas there if you haven't experienced it. So I want to dig in for a few minutes about how the rebranding, what are the cool bits about this rebranding that we should really be paying attention to? In particular, looking into team interaction models and product linking. So when I say team interaction models, I'm talking about team topologies. Thank you for the intro. They talk about three models: collaboration, exit of service, and facilitation. And when we talk about something as a platform, we're often talking about something as a service. And they describe something as a service as one team providing another team, one team provide and one team consume something as a service. It tends to be one provider with many consumers of it. And so, sure, this is like, hey, I need a test environment, and a team can provide you a test environment, right? Something along those lines. Again, ops in a trench coat. Right? I've been there. Can I please have access to test environment 123, please? With version XYZ on it. Yeah. And the thing is we've been through this with the move from Agile, the introduction of Agile and DevOps to this experience of trying to get people to talk to each other, to break down silos, to stop that service idea of throw something over the wall, ask for something, wait for it to come back. We tried to fight that a few years ago, right? And we talk about DevOps as reducing the friction between silos through automation, collaboration, fast feedback, and iterative improvement. Collaboration. So why are we going back to as a service? Through these like no human interaction style of communication. That doesn't feel right. It feels like we're going back to a world of ops. And thankfully, the team topologies team have provided us collaboration as another definition. And collaboration is something that is optimized for empathy. It's optimized for learning. It's optimized for understanding a problem from multiple sides and working together to a shared solution. It's my favorite way of working, personally. I love it. But it's really hard to scale. Like, if I need to learn how to do a database right, I need a database expert. How many of them have you got in your organization versus how many teams have you got that depend on databases? How are you going to have this scale? And so, oh, sorry, I went backwards there. And so that's what drives us towards this model of X as a service. We want that optimization of scale. We want that ability to actually manage a large organization with expertise and also sharing that expertise in a sustainable way. So we get driven back to this model of over a wall, right? So how do we make sure that that over the wall feeling or that X as a service feeling isn't ops in the trench coat? Well, we acknowledge that it is a transition. If you start by offering something as a service, you're gonna fail. If you don't go and get the user requirements before you start designing a solution, you're probably gonna fail. I'm not smart enough for that, personally. So what you start with is you start with collaboration. You start with deeply working with people to understand their problems. Where are they? Why are they doing these things? What do they need? Listen to Abby. Then you go in and you say, can I apply this to more than one place? Cool, I can. There's something here. I can scale this. Then you go to the X as a service. So platform engineering is all about scaling the DevOps principles. It's taking that collaboration and that ability to build and operate your software, but it's making that possible at scale. It transitions things that you understand, but you have to understand them first, things that you understand into services. Bloody hard work. How's that sound in American accent? It's really hard work, okay? So what do I mean by hard work? If you're trying to make a product, something as a service, you need something that people can actually know exists. So you have to make it discoverable. Have you ever tried to find food on a random Tuesday night and gone to your favorite food app delivery. If the restaurant's not on there, you ain't finding it. They're not getting your business, right? Like, that's the same thing for your internal products. If people go looking for something and they can't find it, they're not going to use it. It's just not going to happen. You also need it to be self-service. Like, I'm sorry, you want me to call you to make a reservation at this restaurant? Next. Right? Like, if I can't do this on OpenTable, like, I'm going somewhere else, right? You want to be able to do this yourself. You want to do this on your time and not have to worry about someone else getting involved. You need it to be on demand. I don't want to be sitting there at night at 10 p.m. at night trying to make a reservation and have to wait till the next morning, because by then I'm going to be busy off doing something else. I want to know that I can make that reservation, get feedback about it right then and there, and then understand the feedback loop. And finally, I don't want to think about it after I've made that reservation. I don't want to think about the food order for the kitchen. I don't want to think about the silverware on the table. I want to show up and have a tasty meal with friends. I want to just like let someone else take care of the back end, manage. These are product requirements. These are not just platform requirements. This is what we start talking about with the product. And so we are products as an internal platform. Sorry, we are products as an internal platform. So products being delivered using DevOps principles, not new. Been doing that, been there, done that. But translating that to internal platforms is where we're starting to feel some friction. People are not sure how to take those ideas of product thinking and apply them internally. They're not sure what build and run means when it comes to infrastructure as code, when it comes to configurations and things like that. And so we're trying to massage these new learnings back into the infrastructure world. I'm not going to talk about that. So Abby talked about that. It was lovely. You were all here for it. Listen to her. But what I am going to say, because I'm here talking about the maturity model, is that we on the platform working group don't have an opinion about how you do it. We're not going to tell you how to achieve your outcome. We're not going to tell you what product to use, what tool to use, what code to write. That's not our jobs. We're talking about the principles and the techniques that you might use. And so what you'll notice is that there's nothing on here that tells you, like, the closest thing to like telling you how to do something is the as a product square. Other than that, we used to have things like APIs. No, that's an implementation detail. Don't need to talk about that. There's no implementation details on here. This is outcome driven. This should be durable as an artifact. So, okay, I told you I made a maturity model to help make this more concrete and usable. So now you're gonna go, well, you just told me you took away all the concrete things. Now what do I do? As an organization, you have to think about how you want to pay for these kind of outcomes. And you will pay. You will either pay in your engineering time and energy, or out of pocket in your cash. You will pay. Will you build or will you buy? That's the question. And like, so just to reiterate, it's a little bit repetitive, nothing about any of this tells you can't build or buy to achieve these outcomes. You can do so. All of these squares are achievable with both purchase solutions and home built solutions. So just to reiterate that. So the first thing I would suggest is that we stop talking about build versus buy. And we start talking about the fact that you need to achieve those outcomes. And the most likely chance you have is to do both. You will buy cloud compute resources, probably. You might buy CI/CD offerings, Circle CI, GitHub Actions. Those are buy solutions, right? You might buy even platforms as a service, Heroku, Cloud Foundry. These are great products, right? If they fit your development cycles. You should, not just can you should buy everything that's non-differentiating. All the things that your competitors are doing the same as you on, just pay for in cash. Spend your energies on differentiating things. And there's a lot you can buy. Here's an example of a really popular PaaS today. You get all sorts of things like test environments and observability, support. And if you're willing to talk to someone, I'm not, you'll get even more because enterprise. But all these things that you have to provide as a platform, you get when you purchase. So that's really great. And these are non-differentiating. Your ability to do a test environment isn't how you're going to make money as a company, most likely, right? So what we want to talk about is that we want to buy everything that's non-differentiating, but if you buy something that is differentiating, it's really painful. You start to feel it. There's this great quote from Kelsey Hightower from 2017 that he's convinced the majority of people managing infrastructure just want a PaaS, or a platform as a service. The only requirement is it has to be built by them. He repeated that in 2021. And then Jason Yee was like, let me just shout it for the people in the back. Everyone wants Heroku just built by themselves. Everyone wants to build their own Heroku, right? And this is true. Heroku in particular, I think, gets a lot of the heat here in that it is everyone's favorite platform as a service, everyone's first platform as a service 10 plus years ago. And everyone talks about wishing they could have the Heroku experience. I promise you the company still exists and they would love you to pay them for that Heroku experience. And yet they do struggle, right? Like they are having a challenge there. And that's because organizations have that customization requirement. So when you can't buy your process, when you can't buy your experience, your business, your value, you have to build it. How do you incorporate as many purchased, non-differentiating things as possible and build the things that you must? That's really the challenge right now around platform engineering, in my opinion, following along with stuff. So what we find is that there isn't the one solution that an organization can depend on. These are great tools, just to be clear. I think they're awesome. But they often are focused around a single type of software technology, single type of build technology that may fit for a portion of your org, but not the whole one. And so what organizations need to do is combine this diverse needs that they have. They might have, I learned a quote for another talk that something like 80 or 90% of all credit card transactions go through a mainframe. Like, I don't care how cool all the new technology is, like the world runs on old tech, right? And so if we start leaving all of it in its dust, we're gonna be in trouble. So we have these diverse and bespoke capabilities we have to support as an org. And we want to wrap all them up in this user-friendly and unified experience. We don't want to leave the mainframe developers off in the corner while we allow the forward-thinking functions of the service people to run off in a different way. We want them all to be able to have a developer experience that allows low cognitive load and high focus on outcomes. So yes, so that is achieving it requires product thinking. And that is why I say put your oxygen mask on first as a platform engineer. And that's why we're doing the work in the platforms working group. Because we believe that if you have bad developer experience, it will lead to poor product experience, user experience. So your developers will not get as good of an experience if you don't put the energy into your own first. So invest in that muscle around product building, that feedback loop, and thinking about where you should land on that maturity model. So last little bit is the working group has a whole bunch of information work that we're still doing. In particular, we have some deep dives on some of the core concepts on the table. So platform as a product is a massive piece of work right now where they've introduced a consistent way to interview companies and individuals about their experiences and try and correlate what that looks like across the industry. You might want to be interviewed. You might want to help interview. You might just want to steal the framework and use it internally. All very valid. We also have conversations around what DevX is. I talk about the fact that developer experience is users of the platform as well as creators of the platform. Anybody who is developing code, whether that be hardware, software, whatever. Another little jab, Lou's here. He's leading this charge, and it is an amazing piece of work, and you should get involved if you're interested in that. And some people like the more techie side, so I tend to get more involved in the bigger picture things, but we're talking about things like what does it look like to evaluate specific tools. As I said, we're never going to say this is the right tool to use for everyone, but it might be interesting to compare tools to help people say, given your context, here are some of the, you should apply your context to these 3 tools in this way. And we also want to help people make sandboxes. So there's work being done on what's called the back stack. So Backstage, Argo CD, Crossplane, and Carverno, as well as CNOE, C-N-O-E, which stands for Cloud Native Operational Excellency? Yes. Okay. But both of these are attempting to try and give people sandbox environments with some of the core tools today to have a look at, and so there's work to be done there. So I hope you get involved. We do calls, which we have a Slack channel in the CNCF Slack. You can come join. We often have at least one conversation a week kick off with really interesting back and forth based on people's experiences and learnings. And then we also have a meeting twice a month or so that is synchronous, and you can jump on a call near the end of our working day here in the UK. And it's really interesting to hear what people are up to, get to know people, and get involved in projects. So I hope you all come join us, share your stories in some way. That is the only way that the community will grow. So thank you.
Thank you. We beat me to the punch with a round of applause, but we're definitely going to save and warm up our hands to give another massive round of applause in a second or two. Huge thank you. I feel like my whole platform as a product platform engineering battery is now overflowing, and I'm just ready to bounce out into the world and evangelize, because this has been brilliant. So hopefully everyone else has enjoyed it and has thoroughly taken away loads of these ideas and concepts. I urge you to go and check out that CNCF platform maturity model. There is so much good stuff in there. The 12 pages, I believe it is, well worth reading. It's worth your time. And in all honesty, there's a few ways which I've been trying to bring it to life with people and think about how we apply it. So do go read it.
Share it.
Get involved. We built out a survey and everything. Super interesting. So it's what community is all about, though. Yeah. So right, I think we probably have some burning questions in the audience. Would anyone like to ask Abby anything at all about the fantastic stuff that she has just shared?
Well, I can get started. I guess I'm not going to be the only one. So I do have an interesting question about, you were talking about that maturity model, not the maturity model, sorry, the collaboration model, going from, collaborating to as a service. And it looks great on paper. And it's have you seen any, or do you have any suggestion on how to apply the business? Because most of the time you see, businesses kind of going oh, well, we need to plan, we need to roadmap, we need to create so many teams, and so it's very difficult to say, well, we're going to start on doing the collaboration, and then we evolve into a mature team as a service, and they want to plan it out or from the very beginning. And so
yeah, no, it's a great question. So I was trying to find it. I don't know how to find that here, but the model of collaboration to facilitation to X as a service that Team Topologies lays out sounds really good on paper. What does that actually look like in reality, especially when you have pressures to go straight to a mature product, straight to a service? Is that a good summary? Yeah. So I think, first of all, it's about the fact that in my experience, you're never in only one of those phases. Your product is typically providing some things as a service while also exploring some things in collaboration mode and taking individual pieces through that journey. The other piece is that even something that's already a service can still require collaboration to extend and improve. So first of all, it's just acknowledging that this is not an all or nothing experience, and that helps to make space for that work. The second thing is, so more concretely, ride-alongs is a thing that I really advocate for. So ride-alongs is the idea of actually going and sitting with people when they do work. This can be done at scale in the sense that you can spend weeks on a team, working with a team directly and on a problem space, and it can also be done more in drive-by kind of aspects of let me go spend an afternoon with you and see what you're up to. Particularly at scale, I really like to use it when someone has a burning problem that I want to solve for them in the moment, and I don't have time to try and make it perfect. I just want to get them unblocked. But I want to have the learning to be able to apply to something that might be more widely applicable. So a team comes up and goes, hey, I need a new database type. You offer me MySQL, you offer me Postgres. I now need a NoSQL option. Platform doesn't offer NoSQL, but you need it for some reason. I don't know, everyone loves it. Okay, let me come work with you and understand why you need it, what you're going to use it for, and how we can get you unblocked. And in doing so, I can get you moving while understanding the problem space, going through that collaboration mode. And then I can start to see if that kind of comes up more widely. Can start to use that across teams, facilitation, and then into something that is more formally as a service. So yeah, those are my 2 points, I guess, on that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, good. Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions? Everyone is stunned. I'm sure pizza is probably helped. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna first of all, great presentation, really loved it. And I was maybe gonna ask for some thoughts or some experiences maybe you've had. So I think companies naturally do go, or teams within companies naturally do go from the left side to the right side of that maturity model. So you start with just provisional, you're quite reactive as a team, as a platform team, let's say, and then you kind of want to optimize in the ideal like 10-year plan future. I think what I'm seeing right now in my current team is that it's actually really hard as an individual contributor, as an engineer, to kind of push the idea upward that you do need to be moving like as a whole company. So it's not just the platform team. I think the company needs to be kind of behind this. And previously I've been in developer tooling companies where I could kind of see people were just buying into it really like just straight off the bat. Like everyone knew what they were on about, and like it wasn't a problem. But now I'm seeing a problem where the company I work for is actually not a developer tooling company. It's not a developer first company. It's actually everything else from the business comes first, and then the platform team is there to support the other function. So it's kind of hard to kind of create that vision as an individual contributor. So like in that working group, like were there any examples or any thoughts maybe shared about that, how to make an impact at that level?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as an individual contributor, as a developer on a team, you see the idea of trying to shift your organization, but you actually can't just put the org on your back. And you often can't even just have your team put the org on their back and make it work. You need buy-in from like the CFO to spend money on this. You need buy-in from people well outside your usual sphere of influence. And how does that work? I think that is one of the like goals of this maturity model. So one of the things you'll see is that there's examples of what pains the organization will feel if you don't do certain things. So like the speed at which you can innovate. So I was just doing a whiteboarding today with someone about platform building and what that looks like. And they're like, you ask us to put something super mature in production, we've got it. Unlock. We're a mature organization. We can get there. It'll be great. You ask us to take and try something brand new as innovation. We can do that too. We can throw something up as a container. We can run it. We can get access to it. You ask us to transition something from innovation to production, and we really struggle. That's where we really fall apart. Now, the question is, does that matter to the organization, right? Does the organization actually want to invest in taking some of those innovative ideas and pulling them through to production, or like, is it a bit more kind of empty talk of like trying out new products and things like that? And that's really where you have to start to challenge. So what we've seen, so you asked for explicit examples from the working group, I did hear you. I don't have a ton, I'm just gonna be honest. And this is where I'd love more people to come in and tell their stories. But I think that the things that I heard, so the end user company I did talk about, they did exactly this. And one of the great quotes from them was that they said, we had to stop talking about new and fast and creating things. We had to start talking about maintaining things and upgrading things and managing things. And all of a sudden, leadership started to listen. And so so sometimes it's just a vocabulary change, and it can feel kind of yucky, like you're in marketing or sales or something, as I stand here. But like it is, sometimes it's about connecting with the problem spaces of who you're talking to actually get adoption of things. And that's not just your users, it's also your investors, like the CFO, the CTO, and so forth. So and their example was they stopped talking about, let me help you make a new service, and they started talking about how do you get your service upgraded over time. Now all of a sudden everyone was keen. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah. I think I saw the hand yet.
I question if IT is like a function in a company,
yeah,
and a lot of it is managed by vendors, it's very difficult to bring the culture of platform and the product, because you need to have developers who belong to the company to actually do the discovery and work with them. So how do you work in this model? It's very, very hard. And there are so many vested interests that you need to manage.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants standardization.
Yes. So the question is, like, if you're in an organization that mostly outsources its IT functions to third-party SaaS vendors or just third-party development organizations, even, right? Just third parties. How do you start to apply this product thinking? Because it's at that point you're trying to align lots of different groups of interests, and they all have their own interest in you buying into their system and continuing on with their vendor relationship and not others. honestly, I don't have a really good answer for that either. You all have really hard questions. I think that the point there is making sure that someone internal is thinking about the impact on your organization. So again, to me, it's about surfacing the impact to your org. So I'll do the magical speaker thing of like, let me tell you a different story. So I had a whole thing where I was trying to get an organization that I was a platform engineer at to move from fortnightly releases to more ongoing releases. We had a terror of branches and things, and we couldn't get anyone to care about it. And then I just made a 3-month calendar where I placed every release on the calendar. It was nearly daily, even though we were doing fortnightly releases. Riddle me that. And then I put them down as failed or successful based on if there had been a hot release within like a certain number of hours of it. And our this is when it was really cool to do Dora metrics. And our failure rate, change fail rate was like 92% or something. And it wasn't all mega issues. It wasn't like we were losing revenue on every release, but we were having issues on nearly every release. And so all of a sudden they had to pull their heads out and say, hang on, we thought status quo was okay and good enough, but it's actually not. Now, I see that it's not, and I actually need to make a change. So I'd say to relate that to your question, without any experience myself in that environment, is I would say, how do you visualize the impact on your organization of that divergent interests across these different tools, and what does a coherent success story look like? And then you can start working with these vendors. They have to, you're their customer, right? They have to come to you eventually, but you have to have a vision for them to come to. So creating that vision is going to be the key thing. But that's just from a tangential experience.
Do you mind if I share a little bit of my experience as well? So
Yeah.
We have a third-party engineer, and initially when I joined, it was so broken that they were doing work, just taking it up straight. They were following sprint and everything, but they don't know what they were building. So just continuously just build, release it, not probably QAing it. So when I joined it's like, let's have proper QA process. It really starts small with that team. And then we looked in towards having kind of, like you said, 2-week sprint. Let's just do this. Let's release this. Let's reduce the amount of work we're doing. And then, really prioritizing, out of the 20 items, they were trying to do 20 items. And said, actually, no, let's do 10. Let me help you prioritize that. Then we can focus on that. And then slowly they get kind of the business understanding behind it. Because otherwise, they're just going to keep building without having any sense of what they're building. So there's a very, very slow process. We actually still going through it. And I started small. So I worked with the product team I was working with. And then eventually that team is doing really well. Should we try to work with how they're doing it? So kind of spreading it around. Spreading sounds really weird, like a virus, but you get what I mean.
Wear your masks,
So,
people.
yeah.
No, thank you for sharing. That's exactly you do a great job of sharing this. So that's what tonight is for. That's what the CNCF group is for, is about that kind of co-sharing. And I think that goes to that question of, as an individual contributor, what can I do? And sometimes it is the best you can do is kind of create the environment you want to work in on your team and make that the cool place to be. And then that may or may not change out. That may or may not spread out, but that's okay. If you can make change in your environment, that's great for you and your team, and hopefully it will spread for you.
Easier to try and error in a small team than a big team.
Exactly, yeah. Easier to try and error. Yeah.
So I got one, right? So we've been doing platforms as products for about 25 years at the organization we work at, right? Over the last 8 years, we started using Kubernetes. So I built Kubernetes, and that's it. For the first 4 years, really successfully in the organization. Then things just go, right? We're at the bottom, right? And you said change language, talk about upgrading. We do all of that. But now, when you're becoming a legacy platform and you're trying to build things back up again, your organizational structure is like, oh no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to invest. We're at the point where we're struggling with getting back that focus, which made us successful in the first place. Do you have any experience around how you turn that
So
around?
you hit the chasm of doom for Kubernetes. You hit the chasm of doom for Kubernetes, the hype cycle. It's just, to be fair to you, it took you a lot more years than most organizations. Most organizations hit that quite quick. So what, I guess I'd have to know a little bit, if you don't mind, I'll ask you one more question. When you say that it's now a legacy and you don't really, that you've been doing platforms as a product, but you're not feeling it now, what's changed about your treating of like feedback loops, I guess, would be my.
So from us as a product team, building out that platform, we've always tried to do it that way.
Yeah.
The number of people backing it is reduced,
Investment has gone down.
right? Investment reduces.
Yeah.
Yet adoption increases.
Yeah.
Right. So we have hundreds more applications, thousands more users, but we don't have the same amount of focus. Now, when things go wrong, everyone's on our back, right? So you're fighting that fire there. Meanwhile, you're trying to upgrade and get everyone moving over there. But they don't want to leave the thing that's broken because they're like, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this. It's scary.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to change everyone's mentality. So we are also the cool team in the bank. We're still the cool team. We're still the ones that
I believe you.
right?
I believe you.
Trust me, right? We can pull up a 30-minute session and get 800 people coming to it. In fact, so that's 800 developers engaging.
Interesting, yeah.
We just don't have that top level because they just don't get it.
Yeah.
And if you give them all the metrics, here's 20 outages we've had in the last 12 months.
They want
See what the problem is?
and they still don't.
They still don't. And that's the bit we struggle at. And there's, like, you could say individual contributors or groups of us now just can't get that message out. And that's the position we're in.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had it before. You build a platform which is innovative and new, and becomes very successful, and it becomes so successful, effectively, then it just becomes a commodity, and everyone it's just like it just works, so no one cares.
Yeah.
No, they care when it goes wrong, but it goes wrong so rarely that no one cares.
Or when something does go wrong, it's like a null pointer exception, your pod's crash back looping and it's the platform's problem. Like, that's
So it's your contract to a certain extent is what I'm hearing. So the reason I pulled this back up is one thing I would say is sometimes I think it's fair to think you go multi-directional. And so if you could have a great conversation possibly about how you're really far along in a lot of ways, but actually operationally you're not up to where you need to be, and you actually need to invest in that and need that. So there's possibly a conversation there about how you're feeling the pain of not having invested in one of these aspects. And so if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards and that kind of thing. So maybe there's a conversation there. It's sorry, what was that last thing you said? There's like we were just saying I was saying that. Something really smart. Yeah, it'll come to me. But
something happens to the customer's policy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You suddenly have
the contract thing. So this is where I think there's a conversation to be had here around that elevation of what people know about and care about and what that contract is. So one of the things we have to think about, and this comes into play a bit between this between the centrally tracked, centrally enabled, and the managed services on this operations schedule. When you think about managed services, like you are providing a contract of what you will do and what you won't. So how many of us work off cloud compute and are like, it's Google's fault, like it's Amazon's fault, it's Microsoft's fault, like my database is broken, it must be them. But like we don't actually do that much, because in reality, they have a really clear contract of what they own and what we own. They will give us compute that is running, but they have no guarantees about software patching on it. They have no guarantees about, firewalls on there. That's your job. We have to start to create those kinds of really clear contracts with our users. It's not enough to be like, your fault, not mine. You also have to enable them to have the observability into their own systems, as well as from yours to trust that contract. So if you're going to say there's a contract here that says we will run your compute for you, then you need to make sure they have access to the information they need to know that that's running, that it's not that it wasn't scheduled, it's that it's crash loop backoffing and they can get access to logs. So it's that observability of their own systems, observability of the systems they depend on, and that contract of where you give. But I mean, I can say all that sound really smart into a microphone, but it's not easy work. Like you're describing the hard work right now. And like, yeah, that's where all I can give a pitch for is communities like this and the CNCF is like talk to others who are doing it, because like that's what the conversations we get into. And like, I don't have an answer for you, but I showed you some of the companies we're involved with, and like they will have those same problems and they will have possibly ideas for you. So
it does feel though, sorry, because you mentioned banking, and I also work in banking, and as I'm gonna put it the way one very senior executive put it to us very recently when talking about we also build platforms, and he talked about operational leverage, and in the sense that how kind of finding that measurement that allows you to say how is this platform providing value, how did it enable the business to go live faster, and maybe take the current economic scenario, maybe take advantage of the interest rates being higher, or how does it they reduce the cost in certain areas, and so on and so forth. And so maybe there's an element of measurement that's missing, that that gives them the idea that maybe it's not worth investing as much as before. Just saying.
Rebranding exercise.
Yeah, rebranding.
I would build on what you're saying, and I would say one part of the product management job is the product marketing job, and also, making sure that the users are your missionaries. They are going and putting the right noise in the right ears at the right time, because, and again, it's back to the PR and making sure that they're talking about it and keeping their engagement effective.
One thing I'll say, I'll preface this with, I wouldn't recommend this. And you're in banking, which is quite important. We were in pharmaceuticals, which basically when people could die. And when we weren't getting the traction that we needed, and we wanted to prove the point, we intentionally crashed the system.
Chaos. Chaos engineering.
There's a story about that from, I think, Google, that one of their services, they're like, people started expecting it to be up too much, so we just had to start taking it down on like a weekly basis so that they would
Spending your error budget.
spend your error budget, otherwise people get too used to it. Did you want to share something on that as well? Or?
Oh, no.
Okay. No, but like this is what, just to be clear, like we might grab the mic and share our experiences and our stories, but like this is way more powerful than any one person's voice. So I actually really appreciate it, like you all sharing your stories. Like thank you, helping me out here on these questions. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there anything else people want to
Just a follow-up question regarding the problem. Have your team tried to translate your numbers into like money?
Yeah.
Like monetary.
So you really don't want to know what we've done.
Sounds like your next speaker.
This is going to be platform confessions, or at the very worst, this is platform pub talk. So one way or another.
Because usually, isn't that the way to kind of like talk to the?
Are you able to share anything? Or?
Stakeholders.
I haven't given them a company.
True. There you go.
But we had probably about 40, 50 person strong team 5-6 years ago. That's when we were successful, and they went, "Great, you're really good." And some people want to leave. Cool, we're backfill them, and then we'll increase adoption 300-400%. Right? You're still doing it, aren't you? You're still keeping it stable. You're still alive, and that's why the numbers don't work for us.
Yeah, that's why you need to crash it.
I tell my team on a weekly basis, another outage coming, and it happens. So manifesting it.
I would genuinely say, actually, if anyone is, thank you very much.
Yeah.
If anyone is inspired to speak at the next meetup, we will ensure that you have the opportunity to share. And it may be that this has to be slightly by stealth, and that you work at nondescript FSI company. But
great at posting on LinkedIn.
No, we'll just blank it all out. Exactly what you say. But I mean, I think there's a huge topic here, especially around platform investment and attracting that investment from the internal stakeholders. I know myself, the last time I actually heard someone who was in that kind of C-level role talk about cloud providers, so this was a COO of an FSI organization, they don't care. They don't really care about a lot of this stuff until the point where they went, oh my God, Google Cloud has just offered us such a discount. It's going to save us 200 mil. Think about how big my bonus is going to be. So I think it is these really interesting topics that, exactly as Abby has just said, and thank you for calling this out so much. This is what this is about. It's about community. It's about finding these paths forward. It's about a bit of trauma bonding potentially, but hopefully inspiring each other to feel empowered. And if it's okay with everyone, we'll probably round off our questions there. Because if it's all right, actually, Abby, I would like to bring you up as well, just so we can get one final round of applause for both Abby's. do have a very small thing. You may have heard a tale a long, long time ago about community. And this idea that community effectively starts with a spark, a very small spark. And you end up with these people who kind of have this small spark and you have to breathe on it and keep it alive. But it's a very delicate thing. And all communities kind of start out like that. But we want community to grow because community that is just in one person's hand is not worth much. It's not a true community and it shouldn't be a selfish thing. So for all of us that are in these rooms and get the opportunity to share stories and hear from amazing people who've done amazing things, and also inspire us to go on and do our own amazing things and build on the amazing stuff we've already done, I would really like to invite you to think about the small spark that we've got in this room right now and how we can potentially extend it. So I have a bit of a challenge. There's a thing called the internet. Don't know if you've heard about it. What I would like to invite you to do is, if it's okay, and I'll probably hop out of the way, but if I can invite you to just take a picture of our fantastic speakers, if that's okay with you.
You're definitely staying here.
Okay, I'll fall in line as well. It looks too much like self-promotion, but just take a picture, and if you could share this, whether it's on an internal Slack or on LinkedIn, or if you're still using x.com, then be my guest.
Twitter.
But take a picture, share. It's still Twitter in our hearts. Share this picture. Tell people that you've been here this evening, and take that tiny spark of something powerful and distribute it. And let's start a massive fire around platform as a product, platform engineering, and the amazing stuff that you've heard this evening. So without further ado, a huge thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to our fantastic speakers. And I'll invite one final round of applause before I hand off to Graham to round out the day. So. Brilliant. Graham, over to you. Yeah. The man who made this all possible.
Thank you very much. Three things from me. First of all, a round of applause for Johnny for superbly preparing. Second thing, I'll just reiterate what Johnny said about the community. We're going to do this. We do this every 3 months, every quarter. So anyone that's got any ideas for talks, anyone wants to submit talks, anything that wants to add to the community, just contact me. You can on LinkedIn, the organizer. So just get in touch. And lastly, feel free to go and grab a beer, go and grab another drink, talk to other people. But if you need to leave, then the exit is through this door here, and to the lifts to your right, and then down to floor 0. So because we've locked the main doors down there, we're locked at 7 o'clock.
But said we weren't going to do escape from antics.
Yeah. But thank you very much. Thank you. Hope you had a good evening. Thank you.
We've got at least 3 or 4 more speakers here. You gotta go. I was like, I think he's answered one of those questions like correctly. It's like, you I got nothing. I was loving it. They caught the bar challenge. The thing is, but y'all have been really successful. I haven't seen this kind of engagement in meetups in a while, and so I just keep it going. Genuinely.
Great.
As long as you come out and share your stories now. You got a questionnaire? Come on. Let's see if we can like apply it.
It's also really interesting. We get asked a lot. It shows like a dashboard. How do we connect users and utilize the ideas, understand the value, and then go actually help people up, help people up for the team attraction. So we've been putting together a loop. So look, just get this flow rhythm, and you'll start naturally. What did he say?
Bye to everyone.
It'd be really cool. So I know you all have your own environment stuff that you do, but we are trying very hard to push more.
Yes.
So like anything possible. So I think we have like a software like company here. or vice versa. I don't know. But basically, it's not like it's just like another avenue, and like much more barriers to entry for people to submit stuff. It's about community. We are signing on to this entire work here for the community member is sharing a story, and like as long as it's not offensive in some way, and as long as it's and if they are going to explicitly, and these are our rules. If you're going to explicitly say I disagree with something or agree with that, that's also allowed, but say why. And that's okay too, right? You can't just like go a different way and pretend to exist in like the ecosystem. But if you can say, this thing was put out in the white paper, we had a different experience, and here's what our experience was, know that too. So if you're
Like we're validated.
Exactly, yeah.
There's almost like ways of working and people on the bottom of that.
There's a whole, yeah.
We're just talking about flows.
This is the type of stuff people are hungry for as well, right? So if I can help make that happen in any way, let me know.
Well, we'll share. We should do this.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And whether or not product that works for a platform, right? Like, if you need to be top down, or can you be bottom up? What does bottom up look like? These are the conversations that you need to have. Like,
Thanks for doing
context. And that's okay. Like, share your context, share your.
Sorry.
Yes, we'd love to have you. Thank you for sharing your story.